Hi there, I'm here with Richard Hutchinson, and we're going to talk a little bit about the view from the TA leader's perspective. So Richard, thanks very much for joining me today.
No worries.
First of all, tell us, how did you get into recruitment?
Well, I mean, as you said earlier, I fell into it, but I actually, no, to be honest, I did a communication studies degree, which was about power of language, which was about psychology, sociology, all that kind of stuff. So I've always had that sort of interest in the psychology of people. So there was an element of, I can see how recruitment might play into some of my kind of interest areas. I'm one of those people that watches reality TV. I love watching people. I love seeing how people interact and all that kind of stuff. And initially I thought it was all about like how people are interviewed. But if I'm honest, I've never really been someone that interviews people, because I then got into the kind of candidate marketing sourcing space, which, you know, was all about how do you engage, how do you attract, how do you build relationships and get people into your organization. And that's really what I've then focused on for the last 20 odd years, until I came to CityFibre and took on a head of resourcing role, which was about how do we recruit into our organization at pace, really. Yeah,
you and I have talked about that before, but we've both got a real shared passion for the whole talent attraction, sourcing and recruitment marketing area. It's one of the reasons I enjoy talking with you. So tell us about your move to CityFibre, because that was your first head of resourcing role. When did you start? When did you start in the job, and what was the business like at that time, and what sort of team did you have at that time?
So I'm just literally coming up to 2 years at CityFibre. I came with the kind of challenge of the organisation needed to double its headcount year on year. So the past 2 years has all been about doubling CityFibre's headcount. CityFibre are building a digital infrastructure across the UK. So a big focus for us was about the build, the actual physical fibre infrastructure build across the UK, which meant that we needed to significantly increase our headcount at a fast pace to enable us to get in as many cities as possible and start really building. We're not physically doing the build. We're working with external build partners to do the build, but we are, you know, supervising it and designing it and making sure that from a health and safety and a quality perspective that it is built effectively. So I joined a team that was, I guess, around 7 strong, and at that point I was told that they'd also signed up an RPO, but I then needed to embed that RPO into the solution. So my team now is a size of 13 internally within CityFibre. And then I have an RPO solution that actually just sits under one of our divisions, so the network build division. Given that about 50-ish% of our vacancies are alliance network build, we really needed to superpower that part of our organisation with an attraction and candidate engagement engine that enabled my team to really focus on engaging with the stakeholders, but also managing the quality of the hire, ensuring that we were bringing the right people into the organisation at pace, but making sure that they were right for the organisation too.
So when you started 2 years ago, what sort of numbers was the organisation, and you know, what size is it now?
Yeah, so it's probably about 600 headcount when I joined, and by the end of this year we'll be on about 1950. So we've really gone on that massive journey of kind of bringing the numbers in amongst obviously the limitations that COVID threw at us along the way.
So tell us about that. What was the impact of COVID? Because we're talking, well, March 2020, everything changed, and you were only in the company for 9 months or something by that point, maybe 6 months.
I joined in November, and between November and kind of, I guess, February, it was all about standing it up. It was about getting the RPO in place. It was about getting technology in place, and we implemented a new ATS at the time. And by kind of mid-March, we were on. We had an engine working. We were starting to really develop the process, specifically in that network build space. And then COVID hit us. And so there was a little bit of okay, we need to step back, reflect, understand what impact COVID is going to have. And obviously at the time, no one knew, did they? No one really knew what the impact of COVID was going to be. I guess for us, the good thing was that we were building a digital infrastructure across the UK that the government were very clear was a key initiative. And that actually meant that our field engineers and the people that were out supporting the build were classified as key workers. So once we've got that defined, we actually went from very quickly going from sort of 100% productivity to 30% productivity to 110% productivity, because what we actually found was that there was a desire for us to keep going and go hard, but also we had access to open roads, open streets that we'd not had before. So where we were needing to go across bridges or kind of access areas that was highly dense in terms of people, all of a sudden those places were easier for us to access. So we found that our productivity levels became increased. What we did have to combat is people on the street not necessarily being happy to see us still working, and you know, so we had to go for that whole process of making sure that people understand that we were key workers, because you know, lots of people being asked to stay in their home and then seeing us out on the streets digging up the paths and roads and all that kind of stuff. So we had a little pause, but once we'd kind of reflected and understood the impact for us, we then really cracked on. We had to change our process, obviously, because we were interviewing people face to face. We were going across the country and meeting people at different offices. We moved that to a virtual process where it was pretty much teams led in terms of interviews. I had to work with my team to get the confidence of you can still make effective hiring decisions by interviewing through Teams rather than needing that kind of face-to-face handshake kind of setup that people were used to. And the reality of that is that the recruiters were nervous about that, couldn't really necessarily see how they could still make the right decisions, but we haven't gone back to face-to-face since the world has opened up, because we've got used to a way of working that kind of works in a much more fluid kind of virtual way, if that makes sense.
So you're never going back to the old way of doing things because you've become more productive?
We'll never go totally back. I think there'll be a hybrid balance, which is the same hybrid balance that we have in the workplace, right? In that, you know, I'm working from home today. I went in the office yesterday. I'll probably go in again at some point next week, more to collaborate with people than to just do my day job, because I can do my day job here. But so there's certain times where, as part of the process, it's great for people to meet face to face. But in terms of the core recruitment process, we're not going to move back to everything needs to be done in the kind of old traditional face to face interviewing process, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. The other trend that I want to touch on is that this year, as the world's kind of opened up again, we're not quite back to normal, but we're, I don't know, 80% back to normal. There's been a lot of TA leaders have been complaining that, you know, they're not getting nearly enough applications and there's not enough people wanting to do the jobs and that kind of thing. How has this impacted you? Have you felt that as well, or what's happened?
I think we've got pockets where we already knew that there were skill shortages in a competitive market, right? Because we're not the only organisation that's trying to build a fibre network across the UK, and some of the roles are specialist roles that we are in a war for bringing into our organisation. I think actually what that's leading to more is competition in terms of opportunity, because the kind of some of the people that we're trying to engage with potentially were only looking at CityFibre, but are now looking at multiple opportunities at the same time. So we're definitely finding that people are coming to the end of our process with more than one opportunity in the mix, and therefore we've got to get that process right. We've got to get the level of engagement right, and we've got to get the kind of setting the kind of the expectation of what CityFibre is all about and why we're a great organisation to work, balanced with the fact that we're a fast-paced, agile, ever-changing organisation that, as you double your headcount year on year, comes with lots of complexities and kind of reality that we need to make sure that people understand, so that we don't then find people coming in and leaving fairly quickly. We are definitely seeing counter offers increasing. You know, this is becoming an issue for us in that we will offer someone and then they will be retained by their own organisation, and some of the sort of offers that they are being counter offered are significant increases on where they are today to retain them in their organisation. That's a problem for us, and we are also seeing a slight increase on people that are leaving earlier in their journey in CityFibre. So potentially coming into an organisation and having other opportunities in the background that are still maybe playing out. And so we are starting to see a little bit more of a increase of people leaving in that first 6 months of joining. Now, some of that is our own issues around we've grown. We're not that small kind of organization that has a really great culture. We absolutely do have a great culture, but it's more complex than it was a year and a half ago. And some of that, I think, is about the competition and opportunity that people have within this industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Last thing I want to find out about is you're a bit of a geek around like technologies and better processes and new ways of doing things and marketing and stuff like that. What are the things that you have either been using or have seen that you are really excited about coming into our world in recruitment?
We have a fairly kind of standard tech stack, I would say. You know, we have an ATS. I inherited an ATS when we first joined. It wasn't an ATS that I was a supporter of. We have moved from that ATS to a new ATS. We're using your products, Adam, Candidate.ID, as part of our solution. And we're also using Horsefly to support with things like insight and helping us to understand where our challenges are in the labour market, but also to help us to make sure that we're competitive from a kind of salary and a reward perspective. And we're also using source of match tools to help us be more efficient with the way that we find and engage candidates. So, you know, my aim for the team is to make them as efficient as possible by using technology to do the things as quickly as possible that can be automated and can be done through technology, automation, etc., and allow my team to focus on having really fantastic, engaging conversations with candidates that we're really keen to secure into the organisation. So I don't think we're doing anything overly exciting, but I think we've got a core technology infrastructure that enables us to kind of deliver a fairly decent process and experience for our candidates and our hiring managers. Mustn't forget the hiring managers.
No, absolutely. They're becoming more and more important, especially as organizations want to move to slightly more hiring manager self-serve. I mean, is that something that you have in CityFibre? You've moved towards a little bit more, or is it something you would expect to?
Yeah, no, definitely. So the ATS that I inherited didn't allow for that. The ATS that we implemented absolutely embraces that. So, you know, that ability to collaborate with our hiring manager population, to put more onus on them to drive some of the process, i.e. the raising of the vacancies and taking it through the approval process, but also when we're engaging with hiring managers on the candidates through the process, that's all driven through the system and is an interactive collaboration. And I think that's an important part for us in terms of efficiency, but also to ensure that we've got a really great relationship with our stakeholders and they're engaged with the process throughout, if that makes sense. Yeah,
it does. Very last question. Magic wand, if you could change one thing, or you could send one thing to the bin, or you could have a magic fix for something, what would that be?
My magic fix, ideally, would have been in a better position from a diversity inclusion perspective. The reality is it's become a massive agenda item, and it's something that as an organisation we're massively committed to, and everything that we do from a attraction perspective is all about making sure that we're bringing a diverse pipeline into the mix, and we're giving ourselves an opportunity to hire a diverse blend of candidates into the organisation. We're doing lots around making sure that they experience an inclusive organisation. So there's lots happening, but I'd love to have had that head start of with organisations saw the importance of this 2 years ago, because what we really need is more senior people in role that reflects that diversity to tell the story of opportunity and enable people to see the opportunity to grow in our organisation, rather than feeling like it's a bottom-up exercise of focusing on diversity through early career initiatives. What we really need is to be able to attract senior people across our diversity agenda now, and I think we're if we'd have had the magic wand of turning this on 3 years ago rather than a year and a half ago or whenever it kind of really kicked off, then that would put us in a much better position than we are today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a difficult thing to try and achieve, not least in a technical environment like you're in. But the most important thing is
engineering, right? We're a male-dominated organisation. You know, in the core of the types of people that we're trying to engage with, we've got some real significant targets on both gender and ethnicity as kind of my hiring targets for this year. And some of that, is finding the right areas to focus on, but actually the reality is what we really want to do is make ourselves inclusive to all types of diverse groups to kind of really make a difference.
So commitment and intelligent thinking are really vital, and it sounds like you're putting that in, so that's really great. Richard, I just want to thank you very much for taking the time to join me. I know you're a busy man, and so getting some time is a real privilege, and all the very best, and let's look forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Appreciate it.